waste is generated as rejects or byproducts or residual solid mass, we can say, and it carries a specific property. It might be contaminated with toxic metals or organic contaminants. So the manufacturing of any material produces a lot of hazardous waste. And one of the examples is the ETP, the sludge which is generated from the effluent treatment plant. So every manufacturing industry will require a certain amount of water, and this water will be contaminated with a certain kind of contaminants. And these contaminants will be treated in the effluent treatment plants under the Water Act. And once the water is treated, a lot of sludge is generated. So that sludge will come under the category of hazardous waste. Similarly, there could be other categories also, which is listed in Schedule 1 of the rules. And it could be the byproduct or of a specific products also. The other interesting source is the user end or the consumer end, where any discarded used material or any discarded unused material having toxic characteristics are considered as hazardous waste. It could be date expired medicines, date expired pesticides, cleaning fluids or solvents, and batteries. We'll also see other categories of domestic hazardous waste in the later slide. So if we talk about the characteristics or the properties that particularly makes a end of life product as hazardous waste, it's very easy to remember that. That's called CRIT criteria, which stands for, C stands for corrosivity, R stands for reactivity, I for ignitability, and T for toxicity. Their definitions has been given in the rules. So corrosivity means anything which is having pH less than 4 or greater than 12. So basically anything which is acidic in nature or alkaline in nature falls into the category of hazardous waste. Why? Because it has a tendency to corrode or cause corrosion effect in the body tissue or other surfaces when it comes in contact with that. So examples could be bleach, laundry, stain removers, oven cleaners, etc. Reactivity means it's the tendency of the waste to which may cause explosion or release toxic fumes, gases, or vapor when heated, compressed, or mixed with other chemicals. Ignitability means the flash point is less than 60%. So the temperature at which any material will catch fire. So it is generally liquid other than aqueous solutions where the organic content should be greater than 20% and the water content is less. Poisonous toxicity means it is poisonous in nature. It might contain traces of heavy metals or high concentration of heavy metals. Then there are other categories also beside this CRIT criteria which should be considered, and including carcinogenicity, carcinogenic substances and preparations that if inhaled or ingested or penetrate the skin may induce cancer or increase as incidence. Now this is very important because this is not something which will cause acute impact. This is something that will cause generally cause the chronic impact. So basically we get exposed to that kind of material, but the onset of disease, the latency period, the onset of disease, there is a huge difference between the onset of disease and the exposure of the chemicals. So these are some often not given adequate attention, the materials which can cause carcinogenicity. Poison, we all know that substances or waste liable to either to cause death or serious injury or harm to human health if swallowed or inhaled by skin contact. And ecotoxicity, if the material has a tendency to cause harm to the environment or the ecosystem, then it has to be considered as hazardous. So now we'll come to the concept of domestic hazardous waste. Now the thing is, domestic hazardous waste, wet waste, dry waste, and sanitary waste are typically the categories of municipal solid waste, which is governed under the Solid Waste Regulation 2016. However, this category of waste, which is known as domestic hazardous waste, or the waste which is actually hazardous in nature, but it is generated from the households. It comes under, it is also the collection storage is governed under the solid waste regulations, where the ULBs or the cities are responsible for collecting the waste. The generators are responsible for segregating the waste at the source. But once it reaches the transfer station, it has to be channelized to the dedicated facilities, or commonly referred as common hazardous waste treatment, storage, and disposal facilities, or the recycling facilities if applicable. And then it is governed under the Hazardous and Other Waste Regulation 2016. So the problem is, why are we talking about it? Because currently the mode of disposal is most of the the domestic hazardous waste is co-disposed with other municipal solid waste fractions. And that is something which is not only causing hazard to the environmental entities such as the groundwater, the surface water, as well as it is contaminating the soil, but also if at all the ULB is able to process this waste, most of the time the recycled products such as the compost is contaminated with traces of heavy metal. So this is something that has to be given adequate attention if at all we want to make sure that this kind of waste is not causing hazard to the environment and the health, and also not affecting the recycled products that we are getting by processing the wet waste and dry waste. So we have already talked about the environmental hazards, and it has been clearly, there are so many scientific evidences that proves that it is not only the waste which is sampled from various dump sites are not only contaminated with heavy metals, but also polyaromatic hydrocarbons, halogenated hydrocarbons. And there has been some study by AIMS, which reported that there is traces of pharmaceutical chemicals such as diclofenac and there is ibuprofen in traces, which is very alarming for us, because it is also we are disposing of the expired medicines and the unused medicines along with other domestic hazardous waste in our mixed waste containers. So this is something that has to be considered now. So what could be the ideal examples of domestic hazardous waste? There could be n number of products that that can be classified as domestic hazardous waste, but these are some of the examples that I have tried to put out here. We have household cleaners, which are the potential domestic hazardous waste once it attains its end of life. The empty bottles, the empty bottles of pesticides, then the flammable products, the painting supplies, and all of that is considered under the category of domestic hazardous waste. If we talk about the quantum, now this is very, very important, and I just want everyone to pay attention here. There are merely 2 studies done over the last few decades, which actually talk about the quantification of domestic hazardous waste in the entire world. So this is one of the study which was done in Europe, and this is not based on any systematic sampling protocols, but it states that India is generating the total quantum of domestic hazardous waste percentage in India's waste is nearly 1.2% of the total waste quantity. The same this study is quite trustworthy because it was validated later by the Karnataka Pollution Control Board, where they also estimated the quantity of waste, domestic hazardous waste in the total municipal solid waste, and they also found out that it varies between 1 to 1.2%. So if we consider that also, and considering that the total municipal solid waste generation in the country today is 1,40,000 tons per day, we can estimate the total quantity as 1,400 tons per day of domestic hazardous waste we are generating every day, which is a huge number, considering that it is a high toxicity, low volume waste. So in hazardous waste management tools, we often use this terminology called high toxicity, low volume waste. So basically waste which is generated in lesser volumes, but its toxicity is multiple, it's huge. And the same holds, and on the contrary, there is something called low toxicity, high volume waste, such as fly ash, which is exempted from the hazardous waste regulation 2016, which is generated in huge quantities, but its toxicity is relatively lesser than the rest of the waste categories. So if we talk about the flow of domestic hazardous waste in the waste value chain, we can see we have created 3 scenarios. The most commonly adopted scenario is the scenario 1, where the ULBs, they collect the waste in the mixed form, where every fraction of the waste is, it is combined together and is collected together, and then it reaches to the dump sites. There will be some informal recycling happening over there, but most of it will ultimately reach to the dump site, where there is potential of contamination of the groundwater and surface water and air emissions because of these domestic hazardous waste, and it will also eventually cause hazard to the health of informal waste recyclers who are working in the dump sites. The other scenario is the scenario 2, in which the waste is collected in a 2-way segregated form, where most of the ULBs are following this or three-way segregation, where the waste is segregated into two-way, dry waste and wet waste. Once it is received, it is collected by the ULBs. It is subjected to, for example, the wet waste is subjected to composting or biomethanation, and the dry waste is channelized to different recycling facilities. In this case also, the recycled products that we are getting might be contaminated with traces of heavy metals. There has been several studies done in the country by various research organizations who has reported contamination of compost of different heavy metals in the compost, such as cadmium, chromium, mercury, etc. And the ideal scenario is the scenario 3, where the waste is handled as per the law. As per the solid waste regulation, it has to be segregated in three-way form, where wet, dry, and domestic hazardous waste should be segregated. But the Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 guidelines suggest that it should be segregated in four-way. That means wet, dry, sanitary waste, and domestic hazardous waste. It is the domestic hazardous waste is collected through door-to-door collection or via the collection centers or the transfer stations, and then it should be channelized to the recycling facility or the disposal facilities known as common hazardous waste treatment, storage, and disposal facilities. Now, what a city can do to manage the domestic hazardous waste in its jurisdiction. So basically, the first thing they can do is to create or amend the bylaws on source segregation to mandate source segregation. Segregation is the key and it is non-negotiable if at all we want our recycled products to be free from any kind of contamination. If at all we want to minimize the pollution of land and water and air, we need to make sure that the domestic hazardous waste is not reaching these places, not reaching the dump site, and is also not contaminating the wet fraction and dry fraction. So there has to be segregated at the source itself, and the ULB should make proper efforts or IC activities or capacity building activities to ensure that it is segregated at the source itself. Engage with waste generators with appropriate IC materials. I have already talked about it. This is the key, and for promoting source segregation, IEC pamphlets and different type of awareness programs should be conducted. Redesign of the waste management infrastructure. So now, if at all the households are segregating the waste into following the four-way segregation, that is wet, dry, domestic, hazardous waste, and sanitary waste, the collection vehicles which are transporting the material from the households to different transfer stations, they need to be designed in such a way that there are different compartments, dedicated compartments for carrying these materials. For example, we have seen vehicles having compartments for carrying wet and dry waste, but there has to be compartments for carrying the sanitary waste as well as the domestic hazardous waste. Bring DHW under the scope of monitoring mechanism, and cities, once they have a proper infrastructure and they are also putting their efforts for ensuring source segregation of DHW, they have to make sure that they are monitoring the progress, identifying the nearest disposal facilities. So this is something which is very, very important. And from our experience, what we have seen, many of the cities, they're able, especially the small cities, they're able to do this source segregation, collect the source segregated waste from the households. They have proper mechanism to collect it, but they are finding it really difficult to dispose it appropriately. And the ULBs are not at all, they just cannot do the disposal themselves. They have to take membership from the nearest common hazardous waste treatment, storage, and disposal facilities, or the recycling facilities if at all it is available, and then they can get it dispose the materials in an environmentally sound manner. So, when we say source segregation, so now we can say that if it is segregated in two-way, which is a basic requirement, but this is also not good in terms of management of domestic hazardous waste. Similarly, the three-way segregation is also not good, because as per the law, it is mandated that the blue bin or the dry, which is meant for dry waste, it can also receive the sanitary waste. So, but then in that case also, there will be a lot of segregation that will be required once the waste is collected by the ULB. And also the domestic hazardous waste, we need to make sure that it is not mixed with sanitary waste, because the way a sanitary waste is treated and the way a domestic hazardous waste is treated is entirely different. There could be possibility that the few components of domestic hazardous waste can be incinerated. But in case of sanitary waste, that is the only thing we can do, the incineration in biomedical waste incinerator plants. So this is also something that we don't endorse. But four-way segregation is the minimum requirement that a city should adopt for ensuring that there is no contamination or hazard happening because of the domestic hazardous waste, and this is the most accepted one. So for implementing the source segregation at households is very important. As I said, the IC activities is extremely important, and CSC has done quite a few IC activities, and we are doing it for Agra, where we have created these pamphlets for the households in Agra along with the Feedback Foundation, and we have got overwhelming response. So this is how we can show. So basically we have to identify what all products should be considered as domestic hazardous waste. We can use some pictographic representation, and we need to make it available in the local language so that everyone can understand. Monitoring is equally important, and in the report, if you will go through the report, you will see that there are only few cities. India has nearly 8,000 cities and towns according to the 2011 census, but only a couple of cities, including Indore, Bhopal, and Karad Municipal Council, are the cities which are doing something about proper management of domestic hazardous waste, starting from segregation, collection, storage, and disposal. Rest of the people are not doing. Rest of the cities are not being able to do it. Although even if they are doing segregation, they don't know what to do with the segregated domestic hazardous waste. So Karad also did a lot of monitoring in order to ensure that it is the households are segregating the waste at the source itself, and they followed this 5-round protocol, where this is a survey type of method. In the first round, they will go to each of the households, they will make the people aware, they will tell them that why is it so important to segregate the waste at the source itself. In the second round, they will go and see if they are doing it or not. In the third round, they will go see who all are not doing it. They will identify those households. In the fourth round, they will again they will make them aware, and they will repeat the step one. And in the fifth round, if they will find that if anybody is not practicing source segregation, there is a penal provision of 500 rupees the households are required to pay as for one mistake they are doing. So this kind of monitoring mechanism is very, very important in order to ensure that source segregation is happening. And source segregation is not something that can be done in one day. It's a tedious job, and it is a continuous process. You have to keep on doing it and keep on monitoring the progress. So this is the customized waste collection vehicles in Indore and Bhopal. As you can see in the first picture, this is a customized vehicle in Indore, where you can see it. Indore is a city which is not only doing it in 4-way, in fact, is doing it 6-way source segregation, and that is the reason segregation is a key for them, and that's the reason they have been like one of the cleanest city, or it is the cleanest city of the country in this survey. So you can see here there are 6 compartments: the green compartment for the wet waste, the blue compartment for the dry waste, this sky blue is for e-waste, and this one yellow is for sanitary waste. There is one more compartment for collecting the plastic waste, and then the important thing is this one, which is the black compartment, as you can see, and the shape is a bit different from rest of the compartments. Why? Because it is appropriate for putting or storing the tube lights, so that's why it has this shape. So in the same way, in Bhopal, they are practicing 4-way segregation, where you can see there are 4 compartments for wet waste, dry waste, domestic hazardous waste, and sanitary waste. This is the storage area or the storage bins in the transfer stations in Bhopal and Indore, where you can see the storage is done in such a way that the material which is used for keeping this kind of domestic hazardous waste should be corrosion free. And the people who are working over there in further segregating the materials, they should be given proper PPEs in order to ensure the occupational health. And the disposal is something that finally, once you say the ULBs or the cities, they get the segregated waste from the source, and then they collect it and put it in the transfer stations. They cannot store it for more than 90 days as per the hazardous waste regulation 2016. But the disposal is something, the scientific disposal is something that is not done by them, because they do not have enough capacity to do that. So for that, we have a dedicated facilities which are known as common hazardous waste treatment, storage and disposal facilities. These are generally, there are 3 modes of disposal that are done, and we will get to hear more about it from one of our panelists, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, who is heading this kind of facility in the country. And so this is basically, it is representing how the management of domestic hazardous waste or hazardous waste is different from municipal solid waste. If you see the cross section of a municipal solid waste landfill facility and you compare it with hazardous waste secured landfills, it will be like way different. Of course, the layers are same and all, but at the same time here, the protective measures are much more than a municipal solid waste landfills or a sanitary landfill. They also have this incinerator plant, or which is dual chamber, and there is enough temperature and retention time to ensure that the material which is subjected to combustion is completely destroyed in the process. And also they have mechanism for pollution control devices which make sure that the emissions from the incinerator is not going to harm the environment. And it is also strictly checked or inspected by the state pollution control boards. So this is the flow of operation in CSW TSDF. So basically they have a set of regulations. CPCB has given a lot of guidelines to manage the secured landfills, and also how do we test and make sure that this particular material is hazardous in nature and should be disposed of as per the hazardous waste regulation 2016. There are a set of parameters which are given, which is known as comprehensive analysis of the waste. After that, CSW, TSDF, they come to a conclusion that what would be the right disposal technology to treat that kind of waste. If it is landfill, they will landfill it. If it is suitable to be landfill, but at the same time it has heavy metals or leachable contaminants, it has to be stabilized or solidified, and then it should be disposed of into the landfill. And if it is having considerable CV, or if it is extremely toxic in nature, it has to be incinerated. So the challenge is, with this report, we came to certain conclusions that there are certain a limitation in the law itself. The first thing is, of course, the lack of data. So as I told you, we have nearly 8,000 cities and towns, but at the same time, we do not know what is the exact quantum of waste, domestic hazardous waste, which are generated by different cities. And that is why we are not being able to address this problem as a big problem, because we do not know the magnitude of the problem. There is gaps in the existing regulation. So now it's very important for us to understand that the definition of domestic hazardous waste in the solid waste regulation 2016 is not exhaustive. It says that it is defined as discarded paint drums, pesticide cans, compact fluorescent light bulbs, tube lights, expired medicines, broken mercury thermometers, used batteries, used needles and syringes, and contaminated wash, etc., generated at household level. So basically, this is giving you a list of products that are considered as domestic hazardous waste, and there is a mention about etc. But it leaves a lot of things to up to the imagination of the household, and also the imagination of ULBs. So they have not mentioned any specific characteristics or properties that defines a domestic hazardous waste. So this needs to be strengthened. There is insufficient source segregation happening. We have already discussed it. So the cities are still struggling to achieve two-way segregation and three-way segregation. So they are not least bothered about the quantity of domestic hazardous waste generated in their city, and that's why they're not promoting the source segregation of domestic hazardous waste in their cities. There is inadequate collection, and of course, inadequate collection means if you're not able to get the source segregated domestic hazardous waste, the collection is something that will not make any sense. The infrastructure, even if it is available in source segregated form, if your infrastructure, especially the fleet, is not designed properly, you'll not be able to make use of that. No disposal mechanism. So I will in this slide only you can see that how many CSW TSDF we have in India. This is extracted from CPCB website, where you can see that we have nearly 47 CSW TSDFs, out of which 18 are integrated CSW TSDFs. Integrated means which are having both landfills and incinerator plants. 18 are the CSW TSDFs having only landfill plants, and 11 are the ones which are having incinerator plants. So this is as per the latest report which is published by the CPCB. Now, if you compare it, this graph is basically, this map is representing the number of common TSDFs in operation versus the total number of ULBs, where you can see a huge disparity. There were 171 ULBs in Punjab, which is dependent on one CSW TSDF. So, and basically these CSW TSDFs are serving the industries, not the cities. So that is also something for us to consider. Cost of disposal and transportation, this is also shared by many, it's one of the concerns which is shared by many of the ULBs who are working with us, that it's really difficult for them, even if they are getting segregated domestic hazardous waste, they have proper mechanism for collecting it. But the disposal costs are extremely high, and also the transportation costs, because these TSDFs are common TSDFs. They are the distance between the city and the TSDF is too much, and that's why they have to bear a lot of transportation costs. So that is also one of the challenges in its management. So the recommendation with whatever challenges we have seen, so basically it's very important to have a proper collaboration. Everybody needs to work for its proper management, including the producers, the consumers, and the urban local bodies. So at the consumer end or the waste generator end, what we can do is we have to see if a particular product is hazardous or not once it attains its end of life. So there are some pictographic representation done at the back of each of the products that we are using. It could be mosquito repellents, it could be pesticides or anything like that, and we have to, these are like these pictorial representation, or the hazard diamond, we can say. These basically represents if the material is poisonous, corrosive, ignitable, etc. And one way could be to minimize the dependency on such products and opt for some organic alternatives. And the other way is we have to be a little responsible while disposing it off. So we know as educated people, we know that these are the products that has to be, it should be take caution when we use it. Like we keep it away from the reach of children or elderly people. But once it is it attains its end of life or it is discarded, we just put it in our mixed bin, which is not the right way to do it. So as generators also, we have to be a little cautious by dealing with that kind of materials. Legal interventions, we have already discussed. The law, Solid Waste Regulation 2016 needs to be little, the mention about domestic hazardous waste has to be, it has to be exhaustive. Introduction to municipal bylaws with penal provision. So what cities can do is, of course, they can notify certain bylaws where they can make the segregation mandatory for all the citizens, and they should also mention about the source segregation of domestic hazardous waste and what all category of waste should ideally come under the DHW. Identification and inventory of domestic hazardous waste by the urban local body. So we have to make sure that these are the different categories of waste, domestic products having hazardous constituents that should be put under the category of domestic hazardous. So we do not have such kind of inventory, and such kind of uniform inventory should be there so that all the cities can see what all products should fall under this category, and accordingly they can prepare their IEC programs and the awareness campaigns. Capacity building programs for ULB officials and waste workers is something that should be done. Extensive IEC activities, of course, for attaining 100% source segregation, and also the monitoring, ensuring proper collection and disposal mechanism. Once it is attained, it has to be, source segregation is attained, the collection should be done properly, and the disposal is very, very important. These cities should get membership with the CSW TSDFs, or for recyclable products, they need to get approach the recycling facility and channelize the material to the appropriate facilities. And the last thing is something that we have proposed as something that we should ponder upon. This is in the very nascent stage in India, the EPR policy, which is there for e-waste and plastic waste. But if we follow the polluters pay principle, the manufacturers are also should be held responsible for producing that kind of material having hazardous constituents. So they should also share the responsibility of environmentally sound and economically viable method for disposal of these kind of materials or recycling of these kind of materials. So I think that's why I said there has to be a proper collaboration between the producer, consumer, and the urban local bodies in order to ensure the environmental sound management, disposal, as well as the economically viable methods for managing these kind of domestic hazardous waste. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much. Over to you, Atim.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richa. Will you please close your screen? Thank you. So thank you, Richa, for the wonderful presentation. So let me now bring in our first panelist, Mr. Binod Babu Mamatullah. So Binod sir does not require any introduction, probably in India, but we have participants from other countries in today's program as well. So Richa, I'll be grateful if you could quickly introduce Binod sir before I invite him to speak.
Sure. So we have with us Mr. Vinod Babu, the Member of Parliament Standing Committee on E-Mobility. He did his Masters in Environmental Engineering from IIT Kharagpur with the Central Pollution Control Board since the last 30 years, of which 12 years of experience is in hazardous and other waste management, and presently working as the Nodal Officer, Waste Management, and as the Divisional Head in the Environmental Information Management Division. We are so glad to have you here, sir. Over to you.
So, Binod sir, let me just throw a couple of questions. You are free to otherwise, come up with your observations on the presentation that Richa has just made. Yeah. Referring to the policy, while the hazardous waste management rule seems to be far more effective for the industries, we can definitely see a lot of loose end when basically we are talking about the domestic hazardous waste at the household level. So my question to you is, sir, do you think that it is time now? SBM 2.0 guideline is also pitching in for a four-way segregation where they are specifically identifying domestic hazardous waste as a specific stream that needs to be considered for segregation. So do you think that it is now time for the ULBs to be supported with a proper guideline or SOP for segregation, collection, transportation, storage, handling, recycling, etc.? And how can CPCB make this thing happen? What is your thought on this, sir? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Atin, and thank you, CSC, for giving this opportunity. Thank you, Richa, and my fellow panelist members. So this is a very comprehensive presentation. We have seen what are the provisions given under the rules, and we have dwelled upon what are the requirements of hazardous waste management and what kind of system should be in place. First of all, the rules have been notified in the year 2016. For the first time in our country, we have come across this term domestic hazardous waste. So there's a good thing that now we have recognized it. And initially 2 years is given as per the rules. By the year 2018-19, we should be ready with implementation should be ready on ground. That was the time given to urban local bodies. First of all, when we are discussing this, we should, before we think that nothing is in place, actually we should look into what is given under the rules, how rules are facilitated. Okay. So first of all, you look into the rules. It tells that hazardous waste, domestic hazardous waste, what is it is. It is given clearly, and it is clearly said it is required to be segregated. Okay. Then if you look into our domestic wastes which are coming out, these dry wastes, domestic hazardous waste, and also some of the recycled paper waste and all these are not required to be disposed on daily basis. The only waste that requires to be disposed in daily basis is the putrescible wet waste. This gives an edge to the urban local bodies in how to manage it. They can schedule once in a week collection of dry waste or domestic hazardous waste once in a month. So it makes their operations much easier. And some of the ULBs are already doing it. They will not be collecting this. first of all, I will give you what are the provisions that are given under the rules. I think perhaps in Richa's presentation, there one or two are not captured, I guess. One is that the urban local bodies have to set up waste deposition centers. This is a well thought provision, but none of the ULBs have come up with this idea. Waste deposition centers are the centers where different types of waste can be deposited by the generators while they are passing by. They can schedule it once in a week. If you go to some of the European countries, especially UK, they get neighborhood waste deposition centers, they call it. So in the weekends, the parents go along with the kids, they walk around into that deposition center, put CL bulbs, that CFL bulbs at one place, e-waste at one place, compound, that agricultural waste, that garden waste at one place. Like that, they drive, and the children also enjoy and participate. They deposit and go. So this is the one concept ULBs can adopt, but it is facilitated under the rules. Another thing they said is there should be one deposition center in every 20 square kilometers. This is the one provision given under the rules. So these are the guidelines is given. Then there should be linkage when we talk about what ULB should do and what kind of facilities should be in place. Then what is the linkage? That is what missing mostly in our implementation on ground, if you look into. Now, if you look at when I talk about the domestic hazardous waste, it is applicable to all the sources that is identified under the rules, solid waste management rules. Of course, the household is definitely one. Also, there will be commercial domestic hazardous waste, we call it. So they will be from the shops. It will be from institutions. It will be from the colleges and schools where chemistry labs are there. We receive many calls from the local colleges, science degree colleges. What should we do with our chemical laboratory bottles where my acid bottle is empty now, I have to dispose it off. So where should my spent reagents to be disposed, where my spent solvents to be disposed? These are the questions come. These are all will qualify domestic hazardous waste. Now we have to also look into, when we look into the practical aspects of disposal, you look into the recent concurrent amendments happened in the hazardous waste management rules to facilitate the domestic hazardous waste. So suppose if I am a college or a school or a larger establishment, I have some domestic hazardous waste needs to be disposed. The pollution control board, first thing they will ask is, where is your authorization? If you look into the hazardous waste rules, the generator should have an authorization. Occupier is required to have an authorization. They have to declare, again go to pollution control board. It is impossible task. So that's why in the 2019, a provision was made for identifying the waste deposition centers. So this can be set up. And also they said, any entity that is not required to take consent under Water and Air Act, they are exempted from the requirement of authorization for generating hazardous waste. So this is the provision came in March 2019. So this will make every college and school or any house or any commercial establishment or institution generating some larger bulk quantity domestic hazardous waste need not take authorization from the pollution control boards because they do not require to take consent. But what they can do, they can deposit the waste at the waste deposition centers. This is also facilitated under rules. Sanjeev will talk about it much. Any waste generator, bulk aggregator. The waste management rules, hazardous waste management rules provided installation of this bulk waste collectors, hazardous waste collectors. So what these collection centers can do is they can charge these hospitals, schools to deposit their hazardous waste there because they cannot go into the long chain of authorization from the pollution control board. So they can just deposit there, and these facilities are authorized to receive the waste and give it to the TSDFs or give it to the recycler, authorized recyclers. This is called the bulk waste collectors. This provision is made in March 2019 in hazardous waste. This is called waste collectors. So this is provision given in March 2019 it came. So this problem is solved by this route. But thing is that people are not knowing it. So I think this is a wonderful report. I found that this is the one point that's missing in this report. Maybe you can add this. So how these entities can link it to the waste collected because it's a business to business. From household, from public to ULBs is always a challenge. So Now, when it is from a entity, commercial entity to the business, it will work. Like in hospitals, we can make it work. So this is the one point I want to bring to your knowledge. These waste collectors can deposit to have linkage with anybody, TSDF, or it can be the recycler. Waste can be managed. So these are 2 points I would like to bring to your notice. I really appreciate the initiative. It is comprehensively covered. And the very specific point you said, can you repeat, Atinji?
Sir, my question was like, since SBM2 is pitching in very strongly for segregation of domestic hazardous waste as a separate stream, so now we understand that the capacity of the ULBs need to be built, and the ULBs probably also need to be supported with a proper guideline or a standard operating procedure to deal with this fraction. So my question was to you, like, can CPCB think of doing something for the cities?
One thing I would like to mention to you is that when the 2019 guidelines of the waste collectors was introduced, the primary intention was to facilitate this only. And in that notification, it was clearly said CPCB will issue guidelines. So it is under preparation. My team is working. Then I will ensure that this linkage with ULVs is specially mentioned there. So this guidance should be given. You are right. We will be soon coming with those guidance. What we have to standardize is that how these ULVs can be linked to either the waste collectors or TSDFs directly. The TSDF can directly receive, and if they are very far away, for example, a TSDF is located in Visakhapatnam for Andhra Pradesh. The waste is generated in Tirupati. It is nearly 840 kilometers. So definitely the municipality cannot give it to Visakhapatnam facility. So what they will do is they will make use of these waste collectors. They aggregate it for a period of time, and the bulk movement can take place. So this kind of linkages we need to build. These are the practical way of solving the issues. Now it is very important. SBM2 is really mentioned. It is good that hazardous waste, domestic hazardous waste is mentioned here. Even if ULBs are collecting it right now, they do not know exactly what. So these solutions we have to bring on ground. So first of all, first and foremost thing is that waste collectors needs to be established. If the connection with the TSDF is difficult, you can create a waste collection centers. From there, these collection centers can be linked to the TSDF. So that is a way out. Definitely CVPCL will come up with some guidance on this.
Thank you so much, sir. Very good observations. Your suggestions are well noted, and we'll definitely add them to the report that we have released today. Yeah. So, sir, I know that you are extremely busy. You have many preoccupations. So I will invite the other speakers, other panelists to join the discussion. So if you can come back and take the questions that we are
I will come back after some time. Sure, sir. Actually, I have given, especially member secretary is not here, so I was given the responsibility. So I have so many issues, so it's taking a little longer time for me. So
no, I understand.
I will definitely join back. So please
continue. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, Vinod, sir. So my next panelist that I would like to bring in is Dr. Rakesh Kumar. But before I invite Dr. Kumar to speak, if I may request Richa to please introduce Dr. Kumar to the participants.
Yes, sure, Atin. So Dr. Rakesh Kumar was the director of National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, NEERI. Presently, he's working with CSIR New Delhi. He completed his MTech in Environmental Science and Engineering from IIT Bombay in 1987 and later got his PhD in Environmental Engineering. He was the visiting adjunct professor at the Center for Environmental Science and Engineering, IIT Bombay, and Drexel University, United States, under the Obama Singh Education Initiative. His main area of expertise is in development of appropriate technologies for environmental quality improvement, including hazardous waste management, air pollution, particularly the vehicular pollution, wastewater treatment and disposal, climate change, and health-related subjects. He has received several awards, including the very prestigious Environmental Leadership Award by the US Asia Environmental Partnership and USAID for the year 2005, also the WASFIC Award in 2012, Hiyoshi Think of Ecology Award in 2015, Trans-Asia Chamber of Commerce for Industries for Environmental Protection 2017, Mumbai, the Green Hero 2019 award, ITAC Award for Best Environmental Institution for Exemplary Environment Protection Work 2020, and CSIR Technology Award. He has been granted 12 patents on pollution control devices and has published more than 160 papers in various national and international journals. So that's all about, I think the list is long, but please forgive me, sir, for missing so many points, but this is something that I felt it is important to tell the audience. So over to you, Atin, for the question.
Thank you. So, Dr. Kumar, so as we understand that even if the cities are managing to collect segregated domestic hazardous waste, looking at the cost of the treatment and disposal, it is extremely challenging to make it a sustainable model. So in such circumstance, it is important to address the issue of financial sustainability apart from the other issues. So if we go by the principle of polluter pays that is currently applicable for the stream of plastics and e-waste management, where the polluter pays principle is applicable and the producer, importers, or brand owners are held accountable for the products that they're introducing to the market. So do you think that similar policy can also be adopted for domestic hazardous waste? And in addition, can we also think of a deposit refund system to create a reverse logistics system? If I refer to the observations made by Vinod sir, so that an efficient logistics system can basically help to transfer this waste from an intermediate storage facility to the CHW TSDF facility. So do you think that it is time to think about such policies? So what is your thought on this? Over to you, sir.
Right. So big thank you to you and also to Dr. Richa, who made a fantastic presentation. I think those who didn't understand the subject now, they would have fairly good idea. And looking at the chat box, I realized that there's a lot of interest. So I'll go one by one. The problem that we are looking at right now is only ULBs and those notified cities and towns, right? But if you go slowly to the rural areas, we find that these hazardous domestic waste are also littered around the whole landscape of our country. And I think therefore there is a cause of concern. This collection system, maybe for cities we may be able to figure it out, but how do we do it for smaller places and people are in transit? I find when people travel by train, which is transporting more than 50 to 60 lakhs passenger on a daily basis in certain areas. So when they are sending all these waste in the atmosphere, we have a problem. We have a very serious problem. Now, how do we solve is a question. So one, of course, which is the easiest thing to do is to put fine, put some cost to it so that you are able to bring that cost figure, because most of the ULBs are in red. Most of them do not have funds to even give salaries to their staff, except probably the big ones. I'm not talking about Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, but the smaller ones, they all struggle for this. And that's the reason why you don't have even sanitary municipal solid waste landfill in these places. Leave the hazardous part of it separately altogether. So what I was doing, bit of, brainstorming myself, that we could possibly address this two ways. A reverse logistic is one thing, that if I have bought it, it is my responsibility to return it. So when I buy a product, I also buy some packaging, or after its life is over, I'm throwing it. So if I can create a system by which everything gets accounted to a head, now we have Aadhaar card, right, which can very easily track most of our behavioral aspect. It looks like we will get into everybody's house because of this. But I think from a household point of view, if there is a point of contact because of Aadhaar or any other number, by which I know how much of waste I bought or how much of product I bought, and I'm supposed to return waste relating to that. So either I do it myself or I do it through somebody. I think that responsibility factor, when it comes in, then the money may flow. And I'll come to the second part of it. It will be subject to further detailing how it has to happen and where it will happen. Some piloting has to be done. The second thing which needs to be also done is in domestic hazardous waste is work with manufacturers and work with them to discuss about design for environment. So in the process of making itself, at the time of manufacturing and at the time of I would say conceptualization, they should worry about how could it get transported or disposed of, or should it not create any hazard at all. So the one which Richa talked about, that how to minimize all the hazardous material in the product itself, that's the starting point. It could be relating to packaging as well as the product life cycle as well. So that's one part of it which can happen at manufacturer's level. The idea that you suggested, that can we have some some kind of charges so that we are able to do arrangement for financing for managing all these waste. I would say let's hear from some of the people who have done innovation. We should not be very regimental in a way of specifying that you must pay so much for doing this. We could possibly have a mechanism where we allow them innovation. So if somebody is able to do certain kind of recycling at a smaller place, which is not hazardous, but it can be made non-hazardous, that should be allowed at ULB's level. And all of these stories can actually be rooted through IEC program that you talked about, so that the local innovation works better. Local ideas actually flow from one place to another. And finally, the last point which I wanted to make is, when we have created all of these things, we have created ICs, we have created charges and related things. However, if still someone is not doing, of course, the easiest thing comes is to find them, right? So if fine alone in our country hasn't worked, people find out ways to take care of that part of it. So why not those who are violating it, or those who are not meeting the norms the way they are supposed to be doing it, they are specifically subjected to IEC program, that you must volunteer for 6 hours, 8 hours every month, or something of that kind. Numbers can vary. That will actually create a lot of opportunity for people who are in this domain. I understand, unless until we create job opportunities for people who are from this field, so that imagine the number that we are talking about, the India's map which Richa showed. It looks like we will need an army of more than 3 to 5 lakhs people to deal with it, if not more, right? So these are the people who could possibly get jobs, and then they can actually make the difference. So I'll stop here. Maybe we can discuss it more as we go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Really very critical observations. So I request you to stay with us till the end of this event, because once we are done with all the panelists, so we'll open up the floor for the questions. We already see a lot of questions coming up. So grateful if you can answer some of them. So I'll just move on to invite the next participant. Our next panelist is Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, the Senior Vice President, a very renowned personality in the waste ecosystem or waste management ecosystem in our country. So Richa, I would request you to just introduce Sanjeev ji to the participants before I invite him to speak.
Sure, Atin. Mr. Sanjeev Kumar is heading the Industrial and Biomedical Waste Management Division of Re-Sustainability Limited, formerly known as the Ramki Environment Engineers Limited, a KKR-backed India's largest waste management company. Since 2007, Mr. Kumar is leading various roles and divisions of re-sustainability. He has been working for a number of projects on municipal solid waste, biomedical waste, hazardous waste, effluent treatment plants, and recycling. He has, to his credit, the largest municipal waste treatment facility, which is situated in Narela, New Delhi, generating 24 megawatt of energy or power using the waste. He has also established a number of municipal solid waste treatment facilities, biomedical waste treatment facilities, hazardous waste treatment facilities, and C&D waste processing facilities all over the country under his leadership in the last 18 years of his association with sustainability. Over to you, Adil.
Thank you so much, Richa. Sanjeev ji, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for taking out time to participate. So as we all understand that domestic hazardous waste, it has found a mention in SBM 2.0 guidelines. So that's how we have started discussing more on this stream of waste. So please elaborate on the operational modalities of the CHW TSDFs in scientific management of domestic hazardous waste, and then how can a city take a membership with the CHW TSDF, and what are the challenges faced by the CHW TSDFs in this regard, and what suggestions would you offer to kind of to get it implemented properly on the ground. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Richa, and hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah. So first of all, I would just request the host to connect Dr. Lakshmi Raghupati. She is putting on the channel that she is unable to join as panelist. So kindly do that.
Yeah.
Will help us with one more very senior advice from the ministry for this such an important discussion.
Yeah.
The second point is that I must congratulate all of you, especially Dr. Richa Singh, Atin Biswas, and the CSE for discussing this as a point when SBM2 has just taken off, and where SBM2 and waste management in line with solid waste management or hazardous waste management has to be in sync to achieve the goal, common goal of Swachh Sarvekshan or Swachh Bharat Mission 2. So I think this time is apt with more than first session of Swachh Bharat Mission going on, and now with the launch of Swachh Bharat Mission 2, where dumping grounds and biomining is being considered as the largest focus area to see that the ugly sore of the city gets away. And in one of the studies or the studies which was provided by CSE, it is being seen that all the dump grounds, especially the two, they have given some data that the two dump grounds in Delhi, either at Ghazipur or at Bhalsawa, is having a lot of contaminants, which may be attributable to the dumping of the contaminated waste or hazardous waste generated in the city of Delhi and being unprocessed, disposed of at the dumping ground. So linking both the Swachh Bharat Mission and the waste management, and giving an example in the report that it is going up with contamination is very high, which may lead to a lot of groundwater pollution and thereby leading to the nearby water bodies, including River Yamuna. I think that is a very good linkage which has been come up with the data. The second data which has been presented in this report and needs an important mention that above the number of studies which was there in that slide which was presented, it was reported that roughly to the tune of 1.8 to 2% of the total MSW generated per day is having domestic hazardous waste component. And if you see the cities with the European Union and non-European Union, you will find apart from Mexican city, India is the first one. So it shows Mexico and India and the other cities are having the same kinds of economics or same kinds of nature of living and the same kind of way of handling municipal solid waste or the hazardous waste, which has a same level of management or mismanagement, to be very specific. If that you convert into the total data, India generates roughly to the tune of 55 million tons per year of the municipal solid waste. If 55 million tons compared to 1 point per day, it comes about to roughly to the tune of 15 lakh metric ton of MSW per day generated. If 15 lakh metric ton out of 2% or 1.8% if you take, it is 32,000 metric ton per day. 32,000 per day of domestic hazardous waste being generated in India. If you convert it into per day, it is roughly to the tune of 30,000 per day. With such a, and if you convert into per year, it is 11.7 lakh million metric tons of hazardous waste, which is equivalent to total hazardous waste generated in the state of India, in the country of India. So domestic hazardous waste is such a burgeoning problem that it is creating to so much of environmental problems as well as contamination, and is almost equal to a market or to a size of what the hazardous waste being generated in the country. And we are finding the identified sources like industries or process units, which is under Schedule 1. And with this, I would request Central Pollution Control Board to take into cognizance that Schedule 1 does not is the only source of hazardous waste generated with such volume, whatever data which needs to be validated. But this data gives a very alarming picture that equivalent to such an amount, domestic hazardous waste is also being generated, which needs an immediate solution. So kudos to Center of Science of Environment and kudos to the team of CSE for bringing out at least to a report which can be debated and discussed at different forums with much more improvisation. With that, coming very specific to the questions asked by Mr. Atim, yes, we have 206, more than 206 biomedical facilities in the country. We have more than 70 hazardous waste facilities in the country. We have more than 4,000 authorized recyclers in the country. With so much of facilities, with so much of mapping of the whole sector, so much of connectivity in terms of how this waste can be channelized for pre-process. Now, pre-process does not mean that it needs to add value. Pre-process here will have certain decontamination, which can lead to a raw material for any other particular value. If these two things does not happen, then it may go to disposition either through TSDF or through any other authorized recyclers, which can either be this. So with so much of facilities, definitely there is a requirement. The gap is huge. But what we have, do we have? Yes, we have. How we take it? We need to step by step work upon how these ULBs are being channelized with bulk generator concept. Bulk generator concept is already there in SBM2. March 1st, 2019 amendment of hazardous waste rules already gives some linkages, though it needs to be linked with SBM2 and given the obligation to the accountability and obligation to the ULBs, and how the TSDF operators or the other recyclers or the processors can be linked into this with the ULBs empanelment and with other things like what has been already been presented in the recommendations given by Ms. Richa, is that you can have an EPR, you can have other methods of disposal, you can have buyback policies. So these are the things which needs to be worked upon. With that, I end my comments, and congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev sir. Please stay with us to take few questions from the participants at the end of the discussion. So my sincerest apology to Dr. Lakshmi Raghupati, who was supposed to be one of our panelists, who is an ex-director in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and currently a visiting professor in Terry University. So Dr. Raghupati, if you can hear us, we are trying to fix the issue so that we can bring you in. My colleagues are working. So as soon as we sort it out, you will be with us and we shall be able to have you in the discussion and participants will be able to hear you. So, but till that time, let me now invite my good friend, Sir Javed Ali Varsi Saab. So he's a consultant and an advisor to Indore Municipal Corporation. So the name Indore doesn't require any introduction, but Varsi Saab is a wonderful colleague to work with. And I will request Richa to briefly introduce Varsi Saab before I invite him.
Sure, Atin. Mr. Javed Varsi has provided technical advisory services to more than 300 cities and towns on solid waste management in India. He has provided services to Indore Municipal Corporation since the last 5 years and working there as Associate Project Design Management Consultant with the EcoPro Environmental Services. Indore has been awarded as Cleanest City of India for the 5 consecutive years. Mr. Varsi has a significant role in solid waste management activities in Indore city related to designing, planning, supervision and monitoring of SWM activities, waste segregation and storage at source, primary collection, secondary storage and transportation, resource recovery, processing and final disposal, IEC and BCC based activities among the ULB staff and citizens, and introduction to innovative plans for SWM activities like circular economy model in solid waste management sector. So we are so glad to have you here. So over to you, Atin, for the question.
Thank you, Richa. Varsi Saab, many congratulations. Now Indore is pretty much in the international arena. So the European countries are now showcasing Indore model and trying to replicate it in their own courtyards. So I need not talk about Indore, what Indore has achieved. So just let the participants know how you have achieved this 6-way segregation in each and every household with segregation of domestic hazardous waste, and how many years did it take to you, and what did you do for local policy, and what were the challenges encountered, especially in segregation and management of domestic hazardous waste, and how you are dealing with it currently. Over to you, Varsi Saab.
Thank you. Many congratulations to CSE and Atin ji, Richa ji, and all the respectable panelists, all the participants First of all, I say a Swachh Namaskar to all of you. So when we start our thing in Indore, we always do a Swachh Namaskar. And talking about the six-way segregation, now Indore is doing it since last 2 years. First of all, we have started our journey and do all these such activities in 2015. And in 2016-17, we are able to achieve the wet and dry segregation. In 2018, we have introduced this third bin for the collection of sanitary waste and diapers, discarded medicines, like whatever the biomedical waste generated within the households. And it has to be sent to the respective biomedical waste facility, that CBWTA, for the disposal. And if we talk about this, why we are discussing all these things, waste management, hazardous waste management, and talking about IEC, behavior change activity, the ultimate motive of this particular is to like how we can aware our citizens to do all such of activities. Because what I think in Indore, we have done like success of Indore lies to the program has been changed to a public movement. Now, how we can done all such of IEC activity, BCC activity to transform or to like a behavior change in the citizens. Like it will be like if we talk about the segregation of sanitary waste, it will be taboo for the women that time. Like to talk about this segregating this sanitary waste. So it is something like to make them understand like what are the hazards are there, what will be the like for to their family, especially when they understand that how it will be hazardous to their children. So we are able to connect the problem that what will be the hazards. So it will be a change like a game changer when we are able to convince them with self-help groups and with our IEC team that how it will be going to affect your children, because mother is associated more of their children. So understand the psyche of the person and to how we can change their psyche and psychology. In the same way, when we are doing all such things, so we have to able to like Richa ma'am has already told that Indore is doing a six-way segregation. So six-way segregation is able to done, but how it has to be done? Like what all things are there? How you can do the social engineering aspects? So that is the most important thing, challenges. Like if we talk of the some of the points has been like missed. One of the hazardous substance which has been seen in older areas is asbestos. So like in the old times, if we have an old hair dryer, so the toaster or the clutch plates, or we can have some decorative items, or the old sanitary used in the bathrooms and for other. So that type of waste is also generated in a city. So to address all such things, it is the most important. So in such a way, like there are a lot of challenges for the Indore Municipal Corporation to do all such type of segregation, especially the domestic hazardous waste. First, to make them understand what is exactly domestic hazardous waste is there and how it is there. Most of the time it has been seen like whatever some chemicals are there, paints bottle is there, it has to be half used, and the rest of the life it has been expired and it has not been taken care by, like it has been threshed out of the house, or it has to be threshed in the open. So to make them understand, it is very important, and to understand the psyche of the citizens. So more work what we have done over in Indore is that is continuous IC activity and behavior change. The capacity building program within the organization, like we talk about the urban local bodies, first to make understand the the staff within the urban local bodies that what all are the hazards are there, how they are dealing, because they on a daily basis they have to be like to deal all such activity, they have to cater, they have to provide the services. So first, like how that particular hazardous waste will not be going to affect their health also, and then a continuous behavior change activities and stakeholders consultation with the market associations, with different business associations or the people. So in such a way, we are able to do a six-way segregation. Indore being the exemplary example, like when we talk about the technologies, like when we want to do a treatment of this particular waste, like if we are received 6 type of segregation, now how we can what will be the possible treatment technologies for that? And many of the urban local bodies throughout India are lacking that they have treatment technologies, they have very good plants, but the raw material required for such plant is not possible. That is, they are lacking of the raw material. So it is the thing that if we do, segregation is the key. And like in every waste management, it has to be mentioned that segregation is the source.
Absolutely.
Like who is the purchaser or buyer of the thing, they have to do this at the source. And somehow the earlier panelists, they have also mentioned this thing that there is to be whosoever they have to understand the responsibility. So it is not ultimately because there should not be a blame game. Most of the time it has been seen that ULB has to be blamed for each and everything. So this blame game theory has to be avoided.
What is one observation that I would like to share, based on the research what we have learned, Dr. Richa can further corroborate this.
Yes.
So, treating 1 ton of domestic hazardous waste would cost something between 20,000 to 30,000 rupees for a city.
Yeah.
If it has to be treated at a CHW TSDF facility.
Yeah.
This is excluding the cost of transportation of that waste from the city to the facility wherever it is. And we have seen the map, so we can pretty much understand that there could be cities where the nearest CHW TSDF facility could be several hundred kilometers away, right? So if you look at these numbers, then it is extremely challenging and it's extremely concerning, and it's difficult to imagine that even if a city is generating a couple of tons or 5 tons of domestic hazardous waste per day, they will be able to spend that much to transport that waste that far, right? And this is exactly why what Richa had proposed in her presentation, that whether the EPR policy can be expanded and the scope of within the expanded in a way so that the products which are falling in the category of domestic hazardous waste can also be held responsible, and that way the policy can be affected like the way it is currently effective for e-waste and plastic waste. So my question to you, I mean, Indore is definitely a standout performer in the whole country, not only in India, but also it is being held in the European region. So what are you doing for its management currently, Indore? I mean, which CHW TSDF have you partnered with, or do you have a captive facility of your own where you are kind of treating this?
Sir, in this particular, Indore is lucky because the nearest CBWTF, the nearest TSDF facility is nearly like 45 to 50 kilometers from Indore. So in that case, we have MP Waste Management, naming TSDF, that is run by Ramki Enviro Engineers. So it is something like that for your like the question you have asked, and even the respected Vinod Babu has also mentioned that we need certain waste deposition centers at the divisional level or at the district level, depending on the size of urban local bodies we can send. Like we must have such type of facilities. So we need to, you have rightly said, for the small ULBs, like having a population less than 1 lakh, where this particular domestic hazardous waste is generated in a very low quantity. So what should be done? So there should be a state policy on that, and state should develop such type of deposition centers also.
Yeah. Very good suggestion, sir. Very good suggestion. Thank you, Varsi Saab. Please stay with us. And finally, with a lot of problems, eventually we got Dr. Lakshmi Raghupati on board. So, Dr. Raghupati, if you can hear us, if you could turn on your video so that participants can see you, or please unmute yourself and confirm that you can hear us. Dr. Raghupati, are we audible to you? Can you hear us?
Ma'am, please unmute yourself and speak.
Dr. Raghupati, there should be a microphone symbol on the bottom left of your screen. You just need to hit that for mute or unmute. Hello, ma'am. Are we audible to you?
Last.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, and my apologies.
To the phone. I had to switch on my phone.
Okay. Are you connected with two devices, madam? Please check.
She has disconnected from both the devices now.
Yeah.
Maybe what I'll do, Atin, I'll read out her intro, her brief bio. So once she,
Please.
I think
Go
because
ahead.
now we can, I think she can join as a panelist now.
Yes, please.
So
Go ahead.
maybe I'll go ahead with her intro and then.
Yeah.
Or shall we wait for her because we already have crossed the time? It's already.
No, we started about 10 minutes later. So just introduce Dr. Raghupat so that whenever she is on board, we can straight away go for the discussion and then we can take as many questions as possible.
Yeah, so So Dr. Lakshmi Raghupati is the former director of Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India, and presently working as a visiting faculty in Delhi School of Advanced Sciences, teaching and guiding projects and research in the areas.
I look forward to meeting you all. Thanks a lot for this. And thanks, Richa, for the wonderful presentation and a comprehensive compilation of the whole document that you have prepared. So I have a few viewpoints because the question that was asked to me was very specific, and it was saying that my job is now today not waste management, because Ramki was my first client from the ministry to do a lot of waste management and disposal. Today our sounding bell is not for disposal but for recovering of resources. So I have now become a resource efficiency person, looking forward to anything, a resource from anything. So it's a very good idea that in the municipal solid waste, we have more than 50% of recoverables, because we have the wet waste which gets into recovery mode. And the other part, the dry waste also, about, if you look at it, almost like 28 to 29% is for recycling. We recycle the plastic, paper, etc. But the part which is not recycled and which has not been, and I really appreciate this panel and this thought process that you have brought in, because the hazardous waste from the municipal solid waste was totally omitted till we had the last brainstorming to make the last manual of 2016 and the rules of 2016. This focus was not there at all. We used to take it for granted. Okay, hazardous waste we'll manage somehow. But that is the main problem, because it has become the culprit waste in most of the landfills, where it has got mixed with other. And we used to teach in the biomedical waste way back in 1990s. I used to teach, and I have guided a couple of postgraduate research, and also one PhD who is now working in WHO as a waste management in charge in Geneva. One of my students is there as the head of the waste management division. But the medical waste has, if you look at the biomedical waste, only 15% is the biomedical waste, which is of concern, which has infectious, which has hazardous constituent. But the rest of the 85%, when it gets mixed, the entire becomes. This is the same story in the case of our municipal waste. That little bit, which they say it's a very small quantity, it's almost like 1.5, 1.2, 1.0% of hazardous and other waste from the household, but they get mixed. But the large quantity of hazardous waste, which we are not seeing, is these containers. You talked about, Richa had given, I just told her you can put that picture on where all these aids are there, which we use in pesticide, our toilet cleaning, our kitchen cleaning. Everything has chemicals. It has either acid, or it's either acid base or alkaline base. I'm simplifying it. And with COVID, we have become more cautious. We are putting more and more disinfectants and things which we are really using it. It's the containers of those which is going to be a matter, because we just rinse it and use it as a plastic. And I was also discussing with the plastic waste management people who want to recycle them. I'm appreciating that, but it has to be thoroughly cleaned and washed. So what had happened in number of places where those big drums were used for hazardous chemicals in Gujarat, I was one of the site in charges there. The hazardous chemical drums were used for storing water, grains, even food. So that became a contaminant and people started falling sick. So similar is the situation here. We have a lot of other containers. One pressurized container which has metal, and metal is very attractive for recycling. And recycling is our motto today, that we bring back everything to recycle and extract the value addition. But are we cleansing it? Are we making it such that it becomes clean enough for recycling? And then when we recycle also, we should see that it is used for certain other purpose. You can prepare some metal hobs for your automobile, or something like which is not going to be used for any consumables. So that is one of the things that is why we need to have the containers, the other things which we are using for the waste, hazardous materials that are being used in the household, and umpteen number of things, even outdated medicines. But one of the things which you are mentioning in your report is the CFL bulbs and tubes, batteries. Please omit this, because these were included as a part of hazardous domestic waste. Still we are disposing it off, but you are not supposed to do that, because this has become an integral part of your e-waste management rules of 2016. And it has to be taken care of in a separate channel. If we mix it, the broken glasses, the gas that is involved from mercury or phosphor, which is going to be very harmful, and it will contaminate the whole thing. So everybody, we have to have in the source segregation. I saw this presentation by the people from other Indore and others, because that is how we should see. If you look at Goa, they have 8 bins. Not today, but 10 years back, they started with 8 bins. In 2010-11, when I went to Goa, they had 8 bins. So 8 bins, when you really ask people to drop separate things separately, so that will give an ease for recycling. First thing is that we have to see. And we should also see that some of the things which are, am I audible? Yeah, because there was a power shot, power dip. So the other thing that we have to see is that whatever we can recycle, why should we allow it to go for dumping or disposal? So a lot of things which are used for hazardous substances in the household can be really recycled with proper segregation. So the one more channel of segregation is the containers and materials which are used for hazardous materials in the households. That has to be segregated. That segregation is done. The other hazardous thing which were originally being considered as hazardous and today they don't consider is the sanitary waste. Sanitary waste, the sanitary napkins and the diapers. They wanted to be eliminated from the hazardous waste cycle, but it is not good, because the sanitary waste and sanitary diapers may carry infection, which may have live organisms. So these two have to be segregated and given for a biomedical waste facility, not for TSDF. So this particular segregation, we have tried to put it for yellow bags. Because the Ramki person who is there in Gurgaon, they said if you give it in yellow bags, we will incinerate it. But finally, we found that those can also be recycled, because the cotton material, the lint that is used and the plastic shielding which is done has to be separated before it is processed. So if you burn everything, you can burn, but you will only be wasting, unless you have a waste to energy plant which can take care. But as far as possible, this can be segregated, removed, and again sterilized and used. So medical thing, if we write to, so we have to see from the hazardous constituents also, what is the thing which is, then you will still further shrink. It may be even not 1%, it may come down to still smaller percentage. So these three distinctly, whatever belongs to electronic waste like this battery, bulbs, etc. should go separately. Whatever, though there is no value, why we are not giving it to Kabadi Wala or why we are not giving it for a second-hand purposes, there is no value. So non-valuable things, everything comes to the municipal waste. That is a headache. So if we further to that, if we are able to do that, half of the problems will be removed, because all the toxic materials are there. Similarly, the putrefiable materials are there in sanitary waste. That can be segregated. The third part is the containers, which are very risky, especially the pressurized containers, which we use for spraying for all these insects, have to be done. So if we can do that, all these can be recycled. Every one of them can be recycled if we channelize them properly. And if we recycle, we will be saving on the more of the natural materials which we are harnessing from nature. That's my advocacy. Today, I always look forward to something which can be recycled.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raghupati. Please stay with us because I mean, you were supposed to be invited ahead of my colleague Javed Varsisa, but because of this technical issue, we couldn't bring you earlier. So now, so the discussion with the panelists is over. Richa, we have already overshot the time, but with kind permission of all the panelists, if we can extend this discussion by another 10 minutes and take as many questions as possible, because I can see the QA box is flooded with questions. So Richa, over to you. I mean, I know it's a very difficult job to do, but if you can just pick up the most relevant, I mean, all the questions are relevant and important.
So I think we are in the position to take 2 to 3 questions, but yes, what I can do is I can categorically answer all the questions, because if I can import the chat, I can write to all the people who have questioned us.
That will be so kind of you. Wonderful. Go ahead, please.
Right now we are in the, we can just take a couple of questions. So I'll just, so one question is, industrial solid waste like paints or solvent drums are being allowed to be disposed in cement kilns. Can this be allowed for domestic hazardous waste also? So can ULB, if it is waste having high calorific value, can they also dispose it into the co-processing plants? So this question, I think Sanjeev sir can answer this if it is.
Quantity.
Yeah, like, do you want me to repeat the question, sir?
No, you said that the drums and the things are going to the cement plants. Did I hear properly?
Yes, sir. So this person is asking about the co-processing the waste which is having high calorific value, like the paint drums and all. So the industries are allowed to send this material to the co-processing plant. Is the same thing can be allowed for the ULBs also or not? That's the.
I think if he has heard Madam Lakshmi Raghupati, she was very critical and very clear in her statement and advice that everything needs to be segregated, decontaminated before it goes to either the processing, recycling or a disposal. Now, I doubt any drum goes directly to the cement plant. I doubt, because generally the cement kilns will not take drums. Yeah. So if that is to be done, then it has to be decontamination. Now, decontamination, CPCB has already published a very clear-cut method of decontamination of drums or larger containers, where there is a process defined, and that process, drum and contamination, has to be used for industrial use, which I think Madam has made it also in her statement. So these are the two processes when it comes to larger containers. But to be very specific, and what I can understand from the query raised by the concerned friend of ours, is that if domestic hazardous waste is containerized, which is in the form of drums like vinyl bottles or any of the deodorants or any of the all-out kind of a thing, which is having chemicals which are really very hazardous, decontamination is the only process, followed by shredding and followed by authorized selling it to authorized recyclers is the only way, rather than putting it to cement plants.
Ma'am, would you like to add something?
Yeah, actually, what he said was correct. Decontamination is the first thing that we have to do. Even at the household level, we can do certain amount of. But paint thing, once in a while it happens. You paint your house once in a while. As you look at the household waste, it's a very once in a while thing, you know, once in 5 years, once in 10 years. The paint sludge can be incinerated, which can add, for that is only high calorific value material. But the container is not. Container may be plastic, it may be polyurethane, it may be polypropylene, it may be metal drums. So that container has to be decontaminated and recycled. As he said, Sanjeev ji said about shredding and recycling, it's a very potential recyclable material. So we should not unnecessarily lose it on any material. Most of the thing, other than thermoplast, everything else can be recycled. And even if thermoplast is there, if you have very hard container, you can put it for road making. Just shred it and put it for road making.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So there is one more question related to the hazardous waste treatment plant, sir. So this is about the cost of establishing. So this also justifies the fact that why the disposal cost is typically high for the ULBs to pay. So like, what is the cost of establishing a hazardous waste treatment plant? That's the question that has been
Treatment
asked.
disposal or treatment plant?
So CSW treat. So basically, as written treatment plant, but what he meant is, of
I
course,
think
storage and
Sanjeev
disposal.
will be able to tell because he has had hands-on with Ramki. We started off with, I think, 26 lakhs and today it's more than 26 crores. Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we used to finance only 2 crores. That was very small amount because Ramki said we spent about 26 crores. So it is 2 crores is a small amount. Today we are having a public-private partnership of 25, 50. Even that is not working out because today the rates are going so high. It's a very expensive affair to have a disposal plant, treatment disposal plant. And if they want to have the scale in which Ramki, and we have a few players in this and all of them have very good treatment disposal plant. And wherever it has failed, it has been shut down. It has not been working. But whatever treatment disposal is done, only my agony is you did not do the heat recovery systems well. If you had managed the heat recovery systems well, it would have been working better.
Yeah, and that's actually.
Sanjeev, can you add to this, please?
Yes, ma'am. I think this question is like that. What is the cost of establishment of TSDF facility is a factor of number of things. Suppose it's the value. The major thing is that it's any such facility requires it's a red category, has to have a 33% green belt, and has to have certain safety norms which are to the tune of international. And I feel proud that India is having 42 of them as on date, of which 22 of them is of resustainability, but balance is 20 is for the other players. And most of them are internationally level class A kind of a facility. So the cost is on the infrastructure based on the regulation. So a lot of cost goes on meeting the regulatory requirements, which is a part of the establishment and the operation and maintenance cost. As far as the one question which was raised by somebody, or I think Richa only raised, or sorry, Mr. Atin raised, is that 20,000 is the normal cost of disposal, which is normally coming up as per on per ton cost. But if you say the city like Delhi or city like Indore last to last year, we had disposed 700 tons in an annual 1 year, 700 tons of domestic hazardous waste. If 700 tons multiplied by say 18,000 or so, and the billing was roughly to the tune of 70 lakhs for the entire year, can ULB not afford to bear its cost? It is just a matter, it just look like 20,000 per ton, but see the channel. If the cost of dumping through the open dumps at Bhalsava and Gazipur will lead to so much of contamination of the groundwater to the Nazafgarh drain to river Yamuna, is to the tune of roughly around, say Delhi will generate roughly around 2,000 to 3,000 tons of domestic hazardous waste in a year. With that empirical formula which has been presented in the report, 3,000 multiplied by 20,000 rupees, how much it costs? It is not a big amount. It is just 5 to 6 crore rupees a year. So the cost is not there. With respect to the cost of establishment, a cost of establishment depends upon the city where it is. Like Delhi will have a land cost very high. If city like say Trivallur, do it need it? But if city like that or area like that, which is near to Chennai or some kind of a collection center can have, with a range of something around 50 crores, city like Delhi will have something an establishment cost of 100 crores. So this is how the general cost varies. It can be taken as a cost input, but it varies with number of factors.
And it will further reduce if you can recover material out of it.
Yeah, the best part is now domestic hazardous waste needs to be looked in recovery mode. As a resustainability, we are not there to dispose everything because land is a super precious thing. If you lake it to nearby any cities, land is the most scarce resource which we have as on today. If we are not meeting out recovery resource and getting out material out of it, yeah, we are out.
We are heading for a doomsday.
Yeah.
Actually, one more thing I wanted to tell about the EPR, because I've had experience on EPR with these people. The domestic hazardous waste containers and all, we wanted to impress upon, because in US and other places, you can always return the containers. And they are only here, they are only looking forward to Coca-Cola and water bottles. They don't want these Harpic and other things to be returned. So there is no, EPR will not work for this. As I had experienced, I've talked to all these, even those squeezy tubes, you know, they are all they are all containing chlorinated plastics. The squeezy tubes, they don't want to take it back because they say we purchased from one vendor once, another vendor, another time. Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, I can name all of them because I've interacted with all of them for take back system and applying EPR. They said we have different vendors, it will not be possible. So that's why the consumer goods, the probability of EPR application is very, very difficult. I tried for the plastic side, from the plastic side, it's very difficult. So we have to manage it in such a manner that we find those informal sectors, recyclers, who can do a proper job. We collectively make those associations and they function and they give them good technology for processing. Perhaps that will work in a long run. So making it into floor mats, door mats, your car mats, all that can be made into all those plastics, you know. So all that can be used. Thank you.
Yeah, Sanjeev ji wanted to say something. Last quick point, Sanjeev ji.
Yeah, so just to tell that two things, ma'am was saying that resource recovery from the material. Actually, now it can be possible if there is an uninterrupted supply of hazardous waste. The problem is that hazardous waste is not the regular supply what MSW is. So resource recovery finds it very difficult because there has to be regular feed stock. This is the problem, ma'am, and this will, with this kind of enforcement and with this kind of things, definitely it has to move on. The second point, very important, is to be seen is that decontamination at a household level for this material is a very risky material thing. It contains, I'll tell you one such example, the deodorant bottle comes with high pressure. If it is decontaminated with the own thing, with some kind of a puncture, and sometimes that puncturing or some kind of a material use may lead in a spark, it may lead to accident at a household level. So decontamination without any precaution, because it is high pressure, we don't know what kind of material is used inside. The data is also not very clear. So it is not advisable to have decontamination at a household level.
Yeah,
okay, I
agree, because only the small containers like your Harpic containers and your wash bottles, etc., you can do a sort of rinse and put it, you know, instead of sending it with that. Even your milk pouches, etc. Now we are doing an active participation for the collection of milk pouches because that plastic is very important. So we can, but definitely all these pressurized containers and others, no decontamination at home. People try to open up the pressurized container, even perfume bottles, you know, try to open up. Please don't do that. It's a very risky.
Thank you. We are almost we have run out of time. Okay. So I can see the hand raised by Varsi Saab. So Varsi Saab, final point from you, and then we can close.
Sir, I just want to ask one question to Sanjeev ji. Sanjeev ji, you have a one of the leading waste management company. So, sir, can it be done like for the urban local bodies, like having a population of more than 1 million? 1 million. So, if we talk of the user charges, so from your side, it can be your decision that all those urban local bodies who are having a good financial muscle power, you can charge a good whatever the reasonable amount for the disposal of this hazardous waste, and for the small urban local bodies which are generating very less in number, so can it be fixed like the charges?
Definitely, sir. It has to go. If you read the SBM2, user charges is the SBM2 this thing. User charges for daily household is there. User charge for bulk generators are also defined. Now, user charge for domestic hazardous waste can easily be done. It is how the ULB and the TSDF operator and the door-to-door waste collector, because there is a channel here. This channel needs to be coordinated and collaborated. With this collaboration, I think it is doable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev ji. Richa, do
All
you
can be
want to
put
take
in
any
the bylaws. I think the urban local body should frame the bylaws as soon as possible. The bylaws are not there in most of the ULBs. I think through the CSE, the message should go that everybody should be doing the bylaws in war footing, because it should have been done long back, 2016
ma'am.
and 1 year time. So it
We
is
are
not.
pushing this agenda, but
The
our
bylaws will
learning.
give the framework. I have given bylaws for number of states, and bylaws, and also like Gurgaon I have given separately. The bylaws give the framework of how much you can charge as a cost, so you will recover easily. Once the bylaws are there, if you put the, otherwise arbitrary fining is going on. That I don't like. That they should.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Richa, can I just now close because we have.
Yes, please do that, because we have already crossed half an hour.
Anyway, I mean, this discussion is, so fascinating that, I would have liked to, continue it for hours, but we are supposed to close at 4:30, but we started about 10 minutes late. So we have overshot by good 20 minutes. So, but the discussion has been fascinating and facilitated by all the panelists. We have got so many different viewpoints, observations, very critical going forward to push the agenda of, sustainable domestic hazardous waste management. A lot to be done. And as a research institute, we would definitely keep on pushing this agenda with the policymakers, ULBs, implementers, and the industry representatives as well, because without their participation, it's practically impossible to do anything. So thank you so much. Thanks to all the panelists for their time and sharing their invaluable sites with all of us. I also thank Dr. Richa for months of painstaking research and the entire CSE team for producing the report and making this webinar happen. I thank all our participants for joining us today. We would look forward to have your comments, suggestions, and feedbacks on our report. And I would explore with Richa if we can get back to the participants whose questions we haven't been able to answer today. So till we meet for the next time, it's goodbye from all of us. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.